Hello, everyone. We are getting ready to create our very first GUI. So in this particular video, we will discuss chapter 2, which is introducing a GUI, how to create a project, how to add objects to your form, and the naming criteria, and just different things like that. I will be providing demos for maybe the first 3 chapters. After that, I think you will kind of have an idea of how to create the GUI. I think that part becomes easy for you guys. And then I'll start just focusing on more so the coding portion that will be making your GUI functional. So everyone should have Visual Studio 2019. Hopefully you had a chance to watch the downloading Microsoft Visual Studios demo that I provided, and you have it on your system, and you have the appropriate platform that you will need to write Visual Basic programs. So we're beginning with chapter 2, the guided program development portion at the end of the chapter. Each chapter will consist of a guided portion that's at the end that will basically help you prepare your case programming assignment that you'll get for each chapter, okay? So here we have the opening screen of what we will basically where we will start. Okay, so you're going to create a new project, which is going to be your very first step. What I've done here is set it as Visual Basic. If yours isn't set, just go ahead and select the language, Visual Basic. You can also select the Windows platform because we're going to be creating Windows applications, and then desktop because they are desktop applications that can be ran on your system. All right, in this list, every time you're getting ready to create a project, you will always create a Windows Forms app, okay? So this will be the actual link that you will click. And you may have to scroll a little bit because you may see WPF app, you may see blank app, you may see other names that look similar, but you want to ensure that you have the correct one. And that will be the one that we will create, the Windows Form app. And I just want to make sure because sometimes it looks different on my end as well. And I just want to ensure that we are beginning with the appropriate one. And then you're going to click next. And then here you'll see it has Windows App 3. So this is where you give your project a name. I always recommend giving your project a name that's related to the actual project, whatever project you're creating. What it would do, give some type of name pertaining to that. For this particular guided portion, we're using the name pizza selection. So this program will allow the user to select the type of pizza he or she wants to select, okay? So we're gonna call it pizza selection, and you can have a space in between. And then what you wanna make sure you're doing is finding where a location to save your file. So if you are on your computer, you wanna be able to save it somewhere where you can find it and you can access it, and when you're ready to upload it to me, you can upload it, whether it's on your USB or it's going to be on your actual system. So, excuse me. So I'm going to save it to my desktop. I'm going to create a folder called COSP8, just so I can put all of my files here that's pertaining to Visual Basic. And so now I'm gonna save it inside of this folder. I'm gonna select that folder. You'll notice that it's going to save it in my COSP8 folder. Here you're gonna check place solution and project in the same directory. That way, everything that's generated, all the different files, especially the solution files that are generated as you're developing your project, that they'll be saved all in the same location, so that when you're submitting it to me, I'm receiving everything that I need to make sure your program is running properly, okay? And then we're going to click create. And give it a few minutes. Sometimes Visual Basic takes a little time. I mean, Visual Studios takes a little time. All right, so now we have our, I'm just talking about view. Hopefully, I think you're fine as far as viewing. All right, so now where we're gonna start, I'll say the very next thing you will do is just go ahead and pin your toolbox. This is the toolbox that's gonna hold all the different objects, your buttons, your labels, everything that you're gonna add to your form, and you're gonna pin it here. See the little looks like a push pin. You're gonna click that and it's gonna pin it to the side to make it easier for you to access, okay? All right, so the very next thing that you wanna do is rename your form. When you submit your project to me, it should never still be called Form 1. And I cannot iterate how important it is that you do it in the beginning, okay? Because when you change it later on, after you've added a few things to your object, to your form object, to this, basically to this window, it will create errors, and a lot of times I'm not able to find your files and you end up having to redo it. So you want to make sure that you are saving and creating and following all the steps that I provide, okay? So here we're gonna rename our form and we're just gonna call it pizza selection. But for every object that you use, you have a certain criteria that you have to follow. You have to include a 3-letter acronym in front of it. And the acronym generally is related to the type of object that it is. So for your form, it will start with lowercase FRM, which is just short for form. And then you're gonna call it pizza selection. And we're just gonna keep the VB and enter, okay? And we're gonna click yes. This will always pop up and just say yes, because that means now everything that's generated, every file, every solution that's generated for this form will be attached to that name, basically, okay? All right, so once you've done that, now you're ready to start making changes to your form and adding different objects and all of that to this particular form, okay? So the very next thing that you want to do is go ahead and change the title here. So this is you changing the name of your form, so it shouldn't say Form 1. So you're gonna click on it, and anytime you want to actually change the text that appears, that you see, you will always change the text property for all of your objects if you want something particular to be visible. So here, instead of Form 1, we want to call it pizza selection. And notice that it changes it. You'll notice that it has like a, it looks like it might be in the center or whatnot. You'll just space it over in the text area here. If you see down here in the lower hand corner, you can space it over and it'll basically move it over. I'm not very particular about that portion, so just making sure that if you see it in the center, you can go ahead and change it. But the main thing I'm focused on is that there is a name given to it, okay? All right, now that you've set it up to have a name, now you can resize the form. If you want to give the form a particular size, you click on that and you'll go to your property section. So I want to iterate that everything related to your form or any object that you use, you will always come over here to change its properties to something specific that you would like. So here I want to change the size. So I will come over here in my property section. And what you'll do is make sure you click on the object that you're wanting to change. So I'm clicking on the form object and I'm coming over here and I'm looking for a size, and it's going to allow me to change the size. So here I found size, and we're going to change the size to 430, comma 395. Now, I'm not very particular about the size. What I always emphasize is that you just make sure that it's a good size where all of your objects are visible, and that you can, when it's debugged, when it goes live, I can see all your different objects on it and everything fits on it appropriately. this looks kind of small as far as what we're going to be adding to it. So what I'm going to do is just come here and just drag it out a little bit and just resize it just a little bit, which you can kind of gauge it yourself if you want, just looking at it, what size you would want it to be. Okay. All right. So the very next thing that we want to do is we want to add a heading. So if you look at the heading that it wants us to have, is going to be the pizza selection. So now we're going to come over here to all forms, and you'll notice you have a list of several different objects that you can use. We won't end up using all of these objects throughout the course. We're going to basically use all the basic objects. And the first one here we want to drag and drop is a label. So that will allow us to put a heading here, okay, a title. So click on that object. And so now remember, any changes that you want to make to it, you have to do over in the properties section. So first off, you need to give all of your objects a name, as I mentioned. So the first thing we're going to do is change the name of this object. And remember, we said in all names begin with a 3-letter acronym. And so what do you think this one's going to be? So for labels, it will begin with lowercase LBL, short for label, and then whatever name you want the label to have. And we're just going to call it heading, since it's going to be the title that goes at the very top in the center of our form. So LBL, heading. And then now we want to change the text. So I don't want it to say label 1. What do I want it to say? So we're going to, remember, we go to the text property to change the text, and we're going to have it say pizza selection. And notice that it changes the text. What we're also going to do is, now that looks kind of small for it to be a title or a heading. So now we're going to go ahead and resize it, change the font, make it darker. So you'll click on pizza selection, and you'll come over here to font, and you'll click the ellipses here. And now you'll see that you can select different fonts. It probably looks kind of like Word, like you are when you're in Microsoft Word. And you can choose whatever font that you want it to be. I just recommend that it is always readable. Now, the textbook is giving us a preference. And most of the time, if you decide to complete the guided portion, it's going to give you a preference. And so you can always choose the preference that they give, or you can choose the one that you would want. So we're going to use Tahoma. We're going to use bold, and as far as size, we're going to go ahead and make it 16, maybe. I think 16 should be. Well, let's do 14. I think that should be, yeah, that's pretty good size for now. So now we have that, and let's just click save here. So notice this little floppy disk here. Whenever you're making changes to your form, I recommend saving so that you don't lose any work and everything is still being saved, okay? So now what we're wanting to do is have this heading to be in the center of our form. So when you click on it, go to format, and you're gonna say center in form horizontally, and you'll notice that it shifted a little bit. So now it's shifted, and it's gonna make sure that it's in the center of our form, okay? So that's your very first object that you've actually taken and added to it, okay? So the next thing that we're going to move into is adding a picture. Suppose I want to add a picture, okay? If you want to add a picture, you first have to add a picture box object. So drag that over here and drop it on your form, okay? Now here you can resize it, and you can give it, gonna give it a name. You're gonna have to perform all these same steps, okay? So here we're clicking on the picture object. Remember, the first thing we do for our objects is change the name. So now we're gonna come over here to the name property, and we're gonna change the name. So instead of it being picture box, we're gonna give it a name. Now, I recommend the picture name being something similar to what the picture will be, what picture will be added, okay? And of course, all objects have to use a 3-letter acronym. So you know for this one, it's gonna be PIC, pick, all right? And now for this particular project, we're going to be adding 2 different photos, a picture of a deep dish pizza and a picture of a thin crust pizza. So the very first one, we're just gonna call it deep dish because it's gonna hold our deep dish pizza, okay? We're also going to change the size. So here we're going to change the size to 185, 150. And now you'll notice that our picture box was made bigger, okay? So we're gonna have 2 pictures. So you have to have separate picture boxes for each picture that you want to add. So now we're gonna come over here and drag another picture box here, and we're gonna follow those same steps. So we're gonna give it a name. So we're gonna come here, PIC, and this one is gonna be the thin crust one. And we're also going to change the size of it, but instead of changing it that way, I want to show you another way that you can change it, okay? So what we're gonna do is click on the first one that we made, and on your keyboard, press and hold Control, and then click the second picture box, and then release Control. So now you've grouped them together. So any changes that you make, it will be pertaining to both of these objects. So now we're gonna go to Format, all right? And we're gonna say make same size, all right? And we're gonna say both. So now it has made it the exact same size as the previous one, okay? And also, say for example, we want to set it up to align, all right? So let's align them together. So we'll go to Format, and we're gonna do horizontal align. I looked right over it. We're gonna do align, and we want them to be aligned by their bottoms. So that means making sure that the bottoms are even. So you'll notice that it shifted the second image into place so that now they're both visible, okay? You can also set the distance between your objects if you want to, okay? You can also move them. So I'm gonna release it. So you can also move them. You'll notice, like you'll line it, you'll see the little blue snap line. So you can do different things with it, okay? So if you wanted to align them, you can, okay? So it just varies. You can also select and group them again. And you can also do horizontal spacing and just make equal. And it doesn't shift much because we kind of already got it in order, but just seeing the different formats that you can do, okay? All right, so now that we have our picture boxes, we're ready to add some buttons. So now we're gonna, since we're having the user make selections, we're gonna create and add a button for them to select a deep dish pizza. And we're also going to have a button that will allow them to select a thin crust pizza. Another button that we are going to have is a select button that's going to confirm their selection. So once they select the deep dish pizza, then we're going to have a select button that's going to allow them to confirm that selection, okay? So we're gonna have 3 different buttons right now at this point. So go ahead to your Windows form, and what you're gonna do is go ahead and drag and drop a button here. All right, so that's our first button. So what is our first step? Hopefully you're saying name. And you're gonna move over here and give the button a name. So what do you think the 3-letter acronym is for button? BTN. All right, and whatever name you want the button to have. Remember, every identifier, every name that you're giving should be related to what you're creating. All right, so this is going to be for the deep dish. And that's important because as you're writing code and you're writing code to make it functional and event driven, it's great when you have the appropriate name for the object, so you'll know which object you're wanting to have your program access or select or basically perform a particular task. So it just depends, okay? So it's important that you do that. So now we have given it a name. So it's called BTN Deep Dish. And what we're wanting to do is what we're gonna do is go ahead and change the text on the button. Well, you know what? We can do that all at once, but let's go ahead and just change the fun and stuff we'll do all at once, but let's go ahead and give the text a name. So let's change the text property, and what we want it to say is deep dish, right? And you'll notice some of it is cut off. So go ahead and extend it so we can see the entire text. Let's kind of resize it a little bit so we can see all of the text, okay? So that's our first button, all right? So now let's go ahead and add our second button here. Change the name, BTN, thin crust, because this is our thin crust one, and then change the text. So make sure you're understanding the difference between the text property and the name property, okay? The text for this one is gonna be thin crust. We're gonna resize it so that we can see the text. And then remember that we have one more button, which is gonna be our select button, okay? So go ahead and change the name. Let's just say select pizza. Okay, so we'll know. And don't forget to put the BTN. Change the text property to pizza. And we're going to extend it so we can see it here. All right, so now you have both of your buttons, all three of your buttons. So let's go ahead and click on the first one, press and hold Control and select the other three. So what we're wanting to do is format it a little bit, all right? So let's align their bottoms. They're kind of already aligned. Let's do horizontal spacing. Let's make it equal. And you'll notice how it shifts it a little bit to make sure that they're equal. And I think that works, yeah. So let's select them again and let's change the font for all of them. So notice now you're grouping them together and you can change them, especially if they're gonna have the same type of font and all of that. That makes it a little easier where you have to go one by one. So let's go ahead and go to font. And let's stick to what we've been using, Tahoma. So let's go ahead and click that. We're gonna do, you can do regular, you can do bold, but we'll just stick to regular for now. But we wanna make it just a little bit bigger. So the textbook doesn't really give, I don't see a particular size unless I looked over it, but you can go ahead and let's say size 10 so to make sure that the user can see it. And now you can see the actual button here that has the text and it has made it bold. Another thing that you can do, I want to go ahead and show you, which we will get into that more, but you can change the color of the button. So if you go here to for color and web, you can change the color. Let's just do white. Ooh, no, that's not a good one because now it doesn't look. Yeah, let's do the back color instead of the for color. So if you come here to back color and web, and let's change that to white. And you'll notice that the background of the button has been changed to white. Okay, so you can kind of do different things with it. Just make, you know, and maybe you want to be a little creative and make it look a little certain way. You can do all that. Okay, I just wanted to point that out. So let's click our save here. Now we're gonna add another label. All right, so now we're gonna add an instructions label, letting our user know what we need them to do. So go ahead over here, grab labels from your toolbox and drop it on your form. And then, come over here to name. Remember that our acronym is LBL. Let's call it instructions, since it's going to be instructions to the user. And then change the text. What do we want the instructions to say? We're going to tell them to choose a pizza type, and then click the select pizza button. Okay, enter, and notice that we have our instructions here. Okay, so let's move it over. Let's click on it and make sure it's centering the form horizontally. And we can also change the font if we like. Let's make it a little bigger. So come over here to font, and let's also change it to Tahoma. Let's just so that we can be a little consistent. Okay, Tahoma, and we'll just keep regular, and we'll make it a little bigger. Let's do 10, and then we're gonna place it inside of our center in form. Okay. All right, so we have that. Choose a pizza, and then click the select pizza button. And then now we want to add a confirmation label. Okay. So drag and drop. And I just want to point out something right here. You want to make sure that you're separating your labels, because in a lot of cases, they won't be used the same way. Like, choose a pizza type, the instructions will be there, be visible as soon as the form loads, because we need the instructions. All right. The confirmation label that we're about to create now, it shouldn't appear until the user clicks their select pizza button, because now they've made a selection. And then the confirmation should appear, but the instructions label should disappear. It should not be visible. So we're going to work on that in chapter 3. We'll get into that a little bit more later on, but right now, just want to make sure I emphasize the importance of separating your labels, especially those that will be visible or not visible, or maybe changing their actual value. Okay. And here, changing the name, LBL. This is our confirmation message. And then here, where's the text? Here's text. Enjoy your selection. Okay, exclamation mark. All right, and let's go ahead and change that font to make sure it's the same size. Okay, let's see. Okay, here we go. Let's do the Tahoma and 10, and okay. And then click it again, make sure we format it, centering the form horizontal. So now it's aligned, okay? And then now we're going to add a exit button. So once the person is done making their selection, we're going to allow them to click the exit button to exit out of the program, okay? So go ahead and drag and drop a button here at the bottom, and you have it here, and then we'll come over here and give it a name. So BTN exit, this is our exit button, and on the text, we want it to say exit, okay? Let's go ahead and change the font. So we're gonna also have it Tahoma. 10, okay. And now we're gonna resize this to make sure we can see it. Okay, and let's click on it and make sure it's in the center of the form. Let it do it for us. All right. You can change the color and make it white and consistent if you like. All right, so click save. And at this point, you just have a basic GUI that you've created. We haven't made it event driven yet. We haven't made it functional yet, but these are the main steps that you will take in creating your forms. And please review the chapter to make sure you're familiar and understanding the acronyms we're going to use as we're moving forward and creating the objects, and where to find it, how to add them, how to change the text, and all that, okay? Now, the next step that you would want to perform is your start here, which is allowing your program to debug. So now it's going to take your program live to make it functional and usable by the user. So notice here you have your buttons here, and we haven't made them functional yet, which means once we write code, when we click these buttons, something will happen, okay? And we'll notice here that our select pizza, you can resize it and move it, but it doesn't change what has already been created. So we're gonna have to make our select pizza a little bigger to make sure that it appears, okay? But we haven't added the pictures yet, which we'll do in the next chapter. But for the most part, go ahead and get practice creating objects, adding objects, changing name, and all of that. And we haven't made the exit button functional yet, where if we click the exit button, it closes it. But right now, just use the X, okay? And also let's resize this. And then what we're gonna do, once we resize it, click on it, click on the select pizza since it's much bigger, control, deep dish, thin crust. And now what you wanna do is make same size in both. And what that means is it's going to make all of them the size of the select pizza. Whichever one you select first is the one that all the others will follow, okay? And also we want to space them, make the spacing between them equal. All right, so now they're not overlapping, okay? So now you'll see how you can kind of go back and do a little bit of formatting, okay? And you'll notice now this time the select pizza is visible and we can actually see it, okay? So that's important. All right, so I hope you guys enjoyed maybe following along with me. Hopefully you were able to do that. If not, maybe pause the video or stop the video and go ahead and try and follow the steps that I just went over with you to make sure you're comfortable creating your own, and reach out to me to ask any questions that you may have, okay? All right, I'll see you guys in the next video.